Welcome to Travel Secrets with me, Tanya Rose, the podcast sharing wisdom for fellow travellers. Each week, I ask my guests to reveal their 6 travel secrets and the holidays and adventures that surround them. Today, my guest is the lovely Tom Parker Bowles, son of Queen Camilla and stepson of King Charles III. He's a restaurant critic for the Mail, food editor for Esquire. He has a monthly column in Country Life, which I absolutely love. And he's a regular contributor to Condé Nast Traveller. He's written 8 books. And his latest book, which is Cooking with the Crown, is my go-to Christmas present. So anyone that knows me listening to this will be your Christmas present this year.
Oh, God, how kind.
What Tom doesn't know about food and drink is not worth knowing about. And I cannot wait to hear his travel secrets. Welcome, lovely Tom.
How lovely to be here, Tony. Thank you for having me.
It's so fun to see you. And before we get into your travel secrets, perhaps you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and how food has impacted the person that you have become.
Gosh, well, I suppose it's been 25 years almost, a quarter of a century since I've writing about food. You knew me right at the beginning. And yes, food is everything. Food and travel. I get itchy feet within about 3 days if I'm not traveling, even if it's to Manchester or Birmingham. You know, the travel is life, and food is even more important. Food is not just a hobby, or, you know, it is the prism through which you can see everything. You can see history, you can see culture, you can see society, economics. You know, every day I wake up thinking, what am I going to have for breakfast, for lunch, you know, and also every day I'm thinking, oh, where am I traveling, you know, next week or the week after. So yes, the 2 most important things in my life, aside from my darling family, are food and travel. That they are everything. They are what makes my life worth living.
I think actually we met when you had just left school Oxford.
Yeah.
And you were going to be doing something, or you did do something with Ben Elliott, which was Quintessentially, which
you were very kind, you know, because obviously, you know, we were 2 little squits winging it with Quintessentially. I remember when it first started in the 90s, it was a concierge company. I don't have anything to do with it anymore because I sold my shares years ago, but it's still going. And I remember Ben and I used to sort of get, you know, publicity by saying, we'll get you a table at the Ivy. And back in the 90s, that was the table to get. Yeah. And Des McDonald, who was running the Ivy at that point, saying, you 2 posh little shits, whatever. Well, stop saying that. And of course we say, sorry, Des. And of course do it again and again. But you were incredibly kind to us. You know, we were nothing at the beginning. And you know, you were the queen of travel. So it did help hugely.
It was wonderful and such a great idea, and has done so well.
Well, it's still going.
They're still going, exactly. 30 years on.
30 years, gosh.
And then you obviously went into your travel writing and your food writing.
Well, before that, when I left university, I was a film PR for a few years, and I was absolutely rubbish. I love films. I didn't mind looking after sort of talent and watching movies, but I was always in trouble and got sacked in the end. So
you worked for Dennis Davidson, didn't you?
Yes.
He was so charismatic.
I love Dennis. They were incredibly nice. I got into all sorts of trouble, and they always supported me. But then I think I missed one meeting too many, or was hungover at one thing. So that, you know, I think we parted. Well, I'm still friends with Dennis, Stacey. So that was 3 years in the 90s in Soho. That was fun.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm sure we'll get into that when we go into your travel secrets, telling us about Cannes and things, because that's such an enjoyable, if you remember much of it, because it was probably party central as well. So let's go into your travel secrets. What is the number 1 destination that you think everyone should go to once in their lifetime?
There are so many, but really the one that I think comes to me straight away is Mexico. Mexico has this, you know, not to the people who know, but Mexico has this reputation of being lawless. Oh my God, I'm going to go to Mexico City. Am I going to be shot? Am I going to be kidnapped? You know, if I eat on the street, will I get, you know, some awful disease? Mexico is the warmest, most lovely, most varied, most beautiful, most diverse, or one of the most diverse countries in the world. It suffers from really bad PR. There has been awfully and tragically this war on drugs, this sort of, which has been, you know, which has blighted this wonderful country. But the moment I get out of the airport, whether it's in Guadalajara, it's usually Mexico City you come into, and you come out and you smell the smell of sort of masa flour of tortillas cooking and fag smoke and diesel and a little whiff of drain, which is all the best cities have, Bangkok, and I think, oh, I'm home. I sort of relax because it's everything about that place. It's the culture, it's the food, it's the people, it's just everything.
Where do you go in Mexico when you go? Do you go to Tulum? Do you go to Mexico City? Just give us a general
Well,
feel.
the first time I went, I was about 18 with a girlfriend, and we went to Playa del Carmen. That back there, this sounds like one of those, when I went there, it was very small, but Playa del Carmen was about 2 streets then. And we stayed there and then went down to Tulum, and we must have been 18, 19, didn't have much money. I remember having a massive row on the beach once in Tulum. My girlfriend sort of storming one way, me storming the other. But that started it back in, I suppose 1995, I suppose. That started this love affair with Mexico. And then we used to go, a great friend of mine, his father had a most wonderful house down on the Pacific coast. And so every Christmas we used to go, 27th, jump on an aeroplane and go off and spend 2 weeks there, on the Pacific coast of Mexico. And then we'd fly up to this wonderful hacienda they had called Habili, which I think is now owned by maybe Adrian Zek or something. I can't remember who owns it now. But so again, we were, this was Mexico again for about 5 or 6 years. But it's always Mexico City. You start with Mexico City always, because that's where you fly into, and you can go to, like I say, Guadalajara, or you can go to Acapulco. But Mexico City, you've got to start. It's just, you fly over it for hours, this great crater of a volcano, and you fly over and over as you're coming in and land. And I just, yeah.
And where do you stay when you go into Mexico City?
Well, I like as I get older, it's like as I get older in New York, I tend to stay uptown rather than downtown. I quite like the Four Seasons there. It's sort of it's in Centro. You can go to the cooler places and down to, there's a place in, I've completely forgot what it's called, but it's a sort of cool hotel, but it's quite noisy at night, and people are always partying on the roof and you can't sleep.
So when you were younger, it was fine, but now you're not partying so much. You're
exactly.
Quiet.
It's Four Seasons, unlike say Mandarin, which has the same, or like the Peninsula has that same sort of ethos the whole way through. Four Seasons can vary, because I think they're more franchisey hotels, but it is a very nice one. The Four Seasons there, and you're in the middle of everywhere. You can get
I
everywhere.
have never been to Mexico, and I really, really do want to go. I want to go to Mexico City. There's an amazing hotel in Mexico that people have talked to me about for years called Cuixmala.
Well, that's where I used to stay.
Is it?
That was the place which used to be one of my great friends' father used to have it, Jimmy Goldsmith. Yeah. So before it became a hotel, we used to go to Cuixmala. There used to be this amazing dome, this beautiful Pacific, very big waves, quite big currents actually. But we'd all stay in little casitas up above, and you go down to the La Loma, which is the main place. And now I think Alix and Gorfredo, who were, Jimmy's daughter, they run it, but it just is something entirely magical.
Yeah. I've heard so many wonderful things. And then they've also got the Hacienda San Antonio.
And that was Habili, exactly. So you'd fly up there, and then they would have, we'd go and there would be sort of, they'd have bull riding, and you'd sit, because there'd be, all the locals would be there, and of course you get quite merry on tequila, and me and Zach and Ben used to sort of jump onto those. But we got photographs of us on the back of bulls, being thrown off bulls and legging it before. But it was magical. We were incredibly lucky, and we did that for a few years. So it's just, I think in a past life, perhaps I must have been Mexican, because there's very few. Thailand's another place I feel that comfortable in, but I just my Spanish is appalling, but I've been there maybe 20, 30 times to Mexico, and nothing's ever happened. I think you go to the wrong part of London, you go to the wrong part of Bristol, you can go to the wrong part of Hong Kong and get into trouble. Yeah. You can find trouble anywhere.
Exactly.
Just be careful, yeah.
What is your most unexpected travel experience?
Well, I was thinking about this. One of the more unexpected places is China. I love China. But if you go to Beijing and Shanghai, people can be quite brusque. They're wonderful cities. I always used to go with an old friend who's dead now, but he used to live in Hong Kong. And going with him, he was called David Tang, and going with Tang anywhere was, he was larger than life.
You knew everyone there.
Knew everyone, and he would take you off to sort of Guilin and to all these amazing places, and incredibly helpful. I was writing books about other things. But I went to Chengdu in Sichuan, which is And they also said that Chengdu's far enough away from the emperor, and it had the most, I mean, not only the best food, Sichuan food, that wonderful sort of hot and numbing and the rest of it. But anyway, it was this city, I didn't expect it to be this warm, the people to be this friendly and charming. And it was very unlike mainland China. And I respect and love mainland China, but it was very different. And, it had this real street food culture and drinking culture. And it was just, I was rather blown away by it. I'd happily go back to Chengdu.
Have you been to the peninsula in Shanghai?
Now, is that the one on the Bund?
Yeah.
No, because I think I stay at the Enemy or over the river, which takes about 19 hours to get to if it's a sort of rush hour. But no, Shanghai was fascinating. I went up there and, the old French Quarter.
That's so beautiful.
And there again, it's Shanghai was, obviously it was a fishing port not so long ago. And now it's this sort of futuristic Blade Runner-esque city. But then you disappear back into the French Quarter and it's all very civilized again. I like Shanghai very much. There's a small town outside that's still built on all the canals. Did you ever go to that out there? No. And I had a sort of 40-course feast there that I didn't realize it in China, that if you finish your plate it just means you want more. So there was me thinking that's nice, and it just I can eat, but this reached a point.
Do you do street food when you're in places like China? Yeah,
street food is to get to street. The first thing I do is hit the street, because street food is the heart and soul of any food. You'll find the spirit of any national cuisine on the street, especially Thailand, especially Mexico. Those are the two great street food cuisines. But then anywhere, even back in Victorian times, we had a thriving street food scene in London, and we do have this sort of street foodie thing. But no, always to street, just look for a place with a queue where the turnover's going, not
where the locals are going.
The locals are going, and it's that same thing that my Thai is awful. My I'm very bad at languages. But you go onto the street and you point, and that international language of food, of sitting down and breaking bread together and smiling, and and it breaks down a lot of barriers immediately if you want to sit down. And I'm never more happy than sitting on a wobbly plastic chair in some slightly dodgy back alley and eating whatever it is, oyster omelets or whatever it may be. I love street food. Go for the street food.
What is your most overrated or underrated travel experience?
Gosh, you have to be really careful here with
naming names.
With overrated. There are sometimes hotels, big chains of hotels that you get to, especially luxury hotels, the 5-star ones, that are massively underwhelming, that people say are amazing and great. But I do have this thing that wherever you go in the world, you can always find somewhere interesting. For example, we always go every year with my father, because he's very sweetly, we go to Antigua, and we go and stay at Carlisle Bay. And the children, we've been going for years. And one year that, everyone said, hey, you've got to go to, what's it called, Sea Ray or Manta Ray World. It's amazing. You get to swim with manta rays. So off we went, one day, and I was perfectly happy sitting on the beach. And, we got very excited. You get there, you got on this huge boat, and it's pissing with rain and quite cold. And we got there and we sort of got in the water, and these rays sort of come up to you and sort of start biting you. And it was the most terrifying experience. I was out like a rat down a danger in seconds. It was horrible. The children, I've got videos of the children. It was awful. It was the most awful day because these rays, they got these mouths about and these huge, great, they were stingrays. It was Stingray Bay.
Scary.
And that was, everyone burst into tears, not us. And it was raining and it was cold, and it was supposed to be the great tourist attraction of Antigua. That didn't go down well at all. Traveling with children does bring a different.
And actually, you do want to go somewhere very different when you have kids to when you're a couple or when you're,
absolutely.
On your
It completely transforms traveling with children. And again, I remember traveling back from somewhere when Lola, my oldest, was 2. That awful thing of she started crying at takeoff. We had one of those bassinet one, when we put the thing, started crying. Then I spilt something on my seat, and you could just see everyone glaring. That especially in I think it was in business class, that that I sort of do it now if it's a long haul flight, and I think, oh God, there's a baby, but then you have to swallow it and think, we put everyone through
We've
this.
done it too. So actually, Ruthie Rogers was really funny on the podcast. She said she was in business class flying back from New York, and she was sitting and there was a chair free, and then a lady with a baby came, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad that you're sitting next to me because I love babies." And this lady looked at her as if to say, "Are you mad?" And she said that she was genuinely delighted so that she could help the mother look after it.
Gosh, well, Ruthie's a gem.
Ruthie is
a lovely woman,
exactly.
as we know, and one of the great restaurants of all time. But yes, I do find, I get obsessive about aeroplanes and seats on aeroplanes, and in that way that when I was traveling, I was doing a TV series a few years ago for lockdown in Australia, and as we all know, going east you have a far better choice of good airlines than going towards America and west, and it would get to the point, first series it would be business class, and you do BA, and then then you move to Qantas business class, and then second series would be first class, and be straight
Singapore,
Singapore,
yes.
Cathay,
Absolutely.
and then and obviously I wasn't paying. Then you're in a different world, of course. And once you're on those Eastern carriers, either the ones the Etihad or Qatar or Emirates or Cathay, and Singapore.
Yeah, fantastic.
And so there's a great friend of mine called Seb, and we're obsessive about flying and what seat. He always tells me, what
1A
seat,
or
1A,
whatever,
1K, and it's pathetic, and it's very much first world problems, but you really do, and you get really cross with someone's in your seat. And
there was a very good article in the Sunday Times this weekend, actually. It's worth looking it up, by John Arledge, which actually went through all of the different classes and which airline was the best. It was really good. I actually kept it for myself. I thought, right, I'm going to remember those because he's done everything.
But it is, and you find, if we're going to Antigua, I'm not paying £5,000 for premium economy on British Airways to take the children. So we're all, so it is, I'm definitely still, if it's by myself, obviously, but it is business. But with the children, it's straight in the back with all of them.
Absolutely.
And you do become obsessed about the food and the TVs, and you start getting it. But yeah, I'm the one I really want to go is that new Singapore with the new suites.
I know, which you have like a whole area and a bed.
Oh,
and
that's
incredible.
heaven. I look forward. I'm going on a really good carrier and going in comfort. I really look forward to flights just as much as I dread them when I'm going in economy.
So that takes us nicely into the food and drink question, because obviously food and travel go so nicely together. This will be so hard for you to actually answer because I'm sure you don't have a favourite restaurant or a favourite cocktail. But let's just talk about food and what you do like and what you don't like.
I travel to eat. That's the first thing when I'm going. Anyway, I was in Edinburgh a couple of days ago, and the first thing I'm doing is asking people where to go, where to eat. You want to, because get straight into it. But like I say, if I'm in Mexico or Thailand, the first thing I do is just dump all my stuff in the hotel and then out, and out onto the streets to eat at the places I know and I love, and booking everything. So it's really difficult to say what are my favorite restaurants, because it depends on the hour of the day, of the week, of the month. I might sometimes crave amazing dim sum. I might another time, really good Southern Thai food. Another time, beautiful Italian food, or Southern and Northern. So it changes wherever I am. But there are certain restaurants, some of the best meals I've ever had are street food, a bowl of noodle soup in Laos, in Luang Prabang, that you never forget, and it's 20p.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a cliche. But then again, you go, some of my favorite restaurants are in the south of Italy. Like if you go to, I love Naples. I like cities that have a bit of an edge, not in a sort of stupid, disaster traveller sort of way, I'm going to go to Iraq, or not that sort of rubbish. But I love Naples. I love Acapulco. I like all the Marseille. I like all the places that have a bit more, not quite so picture perfect. And Naples is just an amazing city. But once you've been to Naples, you've eaten at Dadora and all those sort of places. You go across to Positano, and one of my two of my favourite restaurants in the world. One is called Da Adolfo. And Positano, you can get a little boat. It's got a sort of red fish sign on it, or you can just charter a little boat to go across. And there's a guy called Sergio who runs it, and you sit with the sand between your toes in the shade, and you have fresh mozzarella on a lemon leaf, or zuppa de cozze, and you have those big jugs of local wine with the peaches in, and it's as much about where you are and who you're with, like all food. But there is just, and you usually miss the last boat back, and Sergio will drive you having the nocello, which is the very dangerous walnut liqueur. You can always go and plop in the sea, you know. There's another place called Maria Grazia, more towards back towards Sorrento. Again, the best fish. But it's those sort of places. It's places that give you a taste of the region.
Yeah.
Now, once you move into this, and listen, I have no issues with Michelin, but never trust a Michelin restaurant in Italy. That's one of my travel tips.
Really?
Because why do you want Poncery?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there are a few examples. Okay, I get that. You know, Massimo Bottura or that sort of thing. I get that. But, you know, I wouldn't want to go to many 3-star restaurants in Italy. I don't want Italian food deconstructed. I don't want strange shaped plates and towers and smears and people explaining every 2 bloody minutes what we're eating. You know, this is it. It was talking about the tyranny of the tasting menu.
Yes. Actually, let's talk about that, because how do you feel about those tasting menus?
I mean, I remember when the whole thing of, I mean, there are certain chefs, Heston Blumenthal, Ferran Adria, René Redzepi, who are geniuses, you know, and I suppose you see them as postmodern cooks. They question, you know, what is a plate? What is it? And I like that sort of, you know, that sort of intellectualization of food. And El Bulli was fantastic. It was in this finca, you know, above Barcelona, you know, a really rural finca. I think you could still smoke in there. And I remember the first time I went, my ex-wife was pregnant, I think, with Lola. So she wasn't drinking, and there were like 42 courses. And, you know, she was thinking, oh, God, this is a bit of a bore. And the first thing comes is a sort of spherified olive, where he'd recreated for an olive, you know, made one. And she's like, well, what's wrong with an olive? You know, why are you going to all this? Shut up, you know. And then after the 6th course, she just said, you know, excuse me, to the waiter, you know, can I just skip through to the pudding? I'm bored of this. And I genuinely thought, you know, like an H.M. Bateman cartoon, Ferran Adria would come out with a cleaver. But literally everyone's mouth dropped, you know, because this was like God, you know, you were there. And he was incredibly nice, still is very nice. But it was fascinating. Same with Noma. Again, the first course at Noma, and it was, you know, genuinely thrilling when it first opened, and still is to an extent, that you were sitting there and there was a big vase full of flowers and twigs, and the first course they went, and there it was, you know, it was sort of
hidden
edible twigs, and the next course were tiny shrimp, you know, still alive, jumping up and down on ice, and that was generally thrilling. And again, like the Fat Duck, when that opened, I went back to it recently actually, and it's as good again as it's always been. But these were groundbreakers. This was, you saw the point of 20 courses. You know, you really got involved, and you got pretty pissed as well because you had 20 drinks. Now though, it's probably because I'm old, I just don't have the patience for it. I also don't like not being able to have a conversation, because every time it's and then they talk through it. It's not the fault of the front of house, or, you know, because they've been told they have to explain what it is. But I don't care anymore. But I do respect, you know, Claude here. Claude basically is one of the great chefs in the world. You know, he can cook high. Bibendum is one of my favourite restaurants in London. And Josephine is just exquisite.
Yeah,
you know,
it's fantastic. On the Fulham Road, it's great,
it's
isn't
a
it?
Lyonnaise bouchon. And I was there last Thursday. I'm obsessed with it. It's brilliant.
Great.
But no, as I get older, the tyranny of tasting, I just can't do 20 courses anymore.
Yeah, that's really
4
good
hours eating.
Let's go into your top insider travel tip or secret.
I was thinking about this at length, and again, if you're a traveller like we all are, you get very anal about your carry-on luggage. Okay, so I used to always never understand people who do carry-on. Oh, fine, we'll just wait for for the bags. Now, even if only if I'm going on holiday, perhaps with children or my girlfriend, for any time over 10 days, you know, otherwise I'm fascist. It's got to be carry-on luggage. Always.
Oh,
and not just the carry-on luggage, but my carry-on stuff for your stuff in the cabin as well. So your computer, your laptop, and your iPad and your books. So I have this bag that I got years ago from Smythe's, and is perfectly made. It fits my laptop.
On top.
It goes on top, but it fits my laptop. It's leather, and it fits my laptop, my iPad. But then things like my adapter, my chargers, my headphones, 2 different kinds, all the different stuff kept in the Cathay Pacific sort of sponge bag, all has to be in the right place. The passport goes in the right place, and everything. And I sort of unpack very carefully in the flight. That goes there, and you know about not plugging it in your power before you take off. So, but I've just found, and this isn't, I'm not being as if I would be, I'm obsessed with Rimowa. Is it Rimowa?
Yes, yeah.
So that is the perfect, and that's now my perfect carry-on bag, because although it goes in two, so you have to wedge everything there, and it's not good if you want to bring stuff back, but it's bulletproof. You know that if suddenly you got in the middle of a, sort of the aliens attacked, you could use it to like sort of ward off their
Have you got
guns.
the silver one?
The silver one, yeah. And I've slightly done it with pink wheels, and my children and girlfriend think I'm weird. I love this. It's form and function. But that so that sort of luggage is really important. I mean, I used to be Toomey before, but now I've moved to Rimowa. But my real travel secret for traveling ever is a bottle of Tabasco. I take a bottle of Tabasco with me wherever I go. And obviously it's under the liquids level. And aeroplane food can be good. On the whole, it's pretty rubbish. But Tabasco is like culinary first aid. Wherever you are, you just whack lots of Tabasco on it, and
everything tastes fine.
Everything tastes fine, and you don't need it if you're going to Mexico or to Thailand, but certain other places, it is just, I always have it on me, Tabasco at all times. So that was, I suppose, it's not really a secret.
No, it's a tip.
It's a
top
tip.
Travel tip from a top travel writer.
Because on British Airways, they only have Tabasco in first class. They don't have it in business. They don't have it in premium. They don't have it in economy. And depending on how nice or not the stewardesses are, sometimes they'd be nice. They say, we'll bring it back. So basically, I just bring it with me at all times.
I was going to ask you on plane food. Obviously, different airlines are different, and some have great ones and some don't. Do they still have caviar on?
They do on
flights?
Cathay first, yeah, and they do on Emirates first. And
I'm
not that
obsessed with caviar. I absolutely love it.
Caviar
my favourite
is,
thing in the world.
I'm afraid to say, and again, this is, I mean, we're not talking about, when I'm going first class, I'm certainly not going to pay first class myself because it's just ridiculous. But if you're working, you're lucky enough to either upgrade yourself or use your miles, whatever. But forget BA. BA, I love BA because I'm stuck to the gold card. I love the people who work at BA. Yeah. But we could do a whole other thing on my issues with BA. But let's leave that. The people who work on BA are lovely. But caviar is, and I know even if it was sold in my local lovely corner shop for £2 a tin, I'd eat it every day. Obviously, it's a lot more expensive, but it's something about it. It's the purity, and I love it. And I remember the old days in the 90s, everyone used to have this contact who was sort of someone connected to BA and used to sell you caviar. On the days where BA used to do caviar in red tins, which was sort of possibly
off the back of a aeroplane.
purloined, not stolen. But yes, on Cathay, you do get a tin of, the first thing is this sort of tin of caviar, and it's good caviar. It's not that rubbish fake stuff, and hot blinis, and obviously it's heresy to put in onions in there and stuff like that. I just like it with lemon and blinis. But the other place where you do get unlimited caviar is on the QM2. Because usually I'm impatient. If I'm going to New York, I want to get there in 6 hours. Yeah. But I did a couple of gigs on the QM2 for Cunard. So you go and it takes 5 days. I did it with my late uncle, Mark Shan, who was a great traveller. We shared a room, like sort of hinge and bracket. And you have a bath in there, and you have your table at, I think it's called the Queen's Grill, which is the most amazing food. But I worked out that, it's sort of unlimited caviar. So they give you a small tin. And then, of course, you can have as many as you want. So I basically just ate caviar for
breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It was amazing, and it was, those. I didn't really understand, because you're not obviously. It's you're when you're on the QM2, you're not on a cruise. You're on a liner. There's a big difference. Got a big deep. And recently, I've started doing some work with P&O. My great friend Ollie Smith does all the wine for it, and I'd never really done any cruising. None at all. I mean, on a boat or otherwise, and. It was brilliant. We started off in Galicia and went down, and we were doing talks and going to the restaurants and sort of the Marco Pierre White restaurants. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant.
So what talks do you do? Do you do talks on your books?
Well, it wasn't. It was about, Ollie's a great friend. He's a wine genius. Yeah. And we just sit in conversation with him, just like this. Yeah. You sit and of course you get questions and you chat, and you just do, then you do wine tastings and you do dinners. And it's really fun. And you sit, we're lucky enough to have 2 rooms that sort of, we're going through the Straits of Gibraltar, and you can get off. And I never thought I'd like cruising, but doing it sort of for a gig. It was really, you know, really
I've
fun.
only done it once. I went on the Sea Goddess, which is the smallest Cunard ship.
Yeah.
I think it's now called Seabourn or something. But it was only 50 people,
Wow.
and it was amazing. And I found out very quickly about the caviar. So
Well,
that's all I did. Sat there.
I mean, the food and on Cunard is one thing, but on Pinot you have every level. There's sushi places, but the amount of food you could eat all day. I think the American sort of liners, cruisers, are even more food, but that you can just eat from dusk, and the quality of the food is exceptional.
Amazing.
I was rather blown away. Yeah.
Let's talk about your most poignant travel adventure.
Well, it wasn't really an adventure. I remember one time, my uncle, who was a great traveller, and he was a sort of adventurer and an ecologist, and he was a great believer. He wrote this book back in the end of the 80s called Travels on My Elephant, where
he's Mark
Shand. And he loved India, you know. And when Ben and I, my cousin Ben Elliot and I, were on our gap year, we were sent off to Kipling camp, where Tara the elephant. So he found this elephant at the Kumbh Mela, I think it was, or was it the Sonpur Mela? Anyway, one of those great Indian festivals. And Tara has sort of chains around her, and she was being used, you know, a begging elephant, very badly kept. And Mark bought her off the mahout or whoever it was, and then thought, I'm going to ride her across India, you know, get to know her and ride her across and you know, take her to Kipling Camp, which was a game reserve owned by the late Bob Wright, but now run by Belinda Wright, a great ecologist. And anyway, you know, it was basically a love story. You know, he fell in love with Tara, and Tara's still at Kipling, and that's
How wonderful!
And so he was this great, you know, he was a great adventurer. As an uncle, he was sort of, you know, the sort of uncle that when your parents say, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'll be like Uncle Mark. That did not go down at all well, especially in the early days where he's a bit wilder. But it was, you know, he was larger than life, and he was, and we travelled on the QM2 together. Anyway, he was just doing some big thing. It was New York about, gosh, it must have been 10, 15 years ago. And he was in New York the great elephant hunt. He did an egg hunt, and there were elephants. They did it all over London as well.
They did in London as
well.
And
they still do it, and it's for Elephant Family. And I suppose one of the weirdest ones was Ben and I going. He slipped. This is a man who'd survived typhoons and hurricanes and cannibals and tribes, and he used to travel with Don McCullen, you know, right into Irian Jay, and wrote great books, skullduggery on that. And we went to go and sort of, you know, Ben and I suppose, because Aisha's daughter was quite young then. Well, she was 18, and my mother and aunt. So we went out to New York, and we were so used to going to New York, you know, to go back and not exactly pick up his body, but to identify his body, because he'd slipped. Classic Mark, having a fag outside.
Out the Gramercy.
Exactly, the Gramercy Tavern, and slipped on the ice, cracked his head, bang, that was it. You know, and this, as I said, was one of the great adventures of our time. He survived everything. And then the very, you know, sort of base, you know, of that, something so mundane, you know. So we flew out to go and see him. And that was one of those ones that, you know, that flight, you know, so well and everything, and to go and get him, and I mean, we didn't get him because you don't do that anymore,
but to go
to the hospital and all the rest of it. And it was, I mean, the thing is that my cousin, you know, my mother's great thing and our whole family's great thing is you've got to be able to keep a sense of humour about everything. And Ben and I were in the embassy. No, there's no embassy in New York. There's a consulate in New York, and we were sorting out the funeral plans. And as usual, we have, you know, he's like my brother, and we love each other dearly. But we started having an argument about. I thought he was being rude on the telephone to somebody, and he wasn't actually. And I'd picked up. Anyway, we ended up having a fist fight.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was like Hugh Grant and what's his name? Colin Firth. It was not a scary fist fight. It was very pathetic.
Bridget Jones fist fight.
It was totally like that. But obviously, being a concert, I would have thought the rooms were bugged. You know, as they always are in things. And so suddenly all these people rushed in, and we were on the floor. And then of course it was excruciating as they came in, and we sort of pulled apart. Then of course we sort of, you know, suddenly after fighting and calling each other God knows what, you know, were in hysterics of laughing, and these people were like, who are these people? Suddenly the air turns blue, suddenly a fist fight starts, and the next thing we're both on the floor crying, you know, sort of everything ripped. So that was it was, I think the poignant ones always go with families, you know.
Yeah.
We used to go to my mother, my aunt, Ben's mother, my cousins, and my grandparents used to go to Ischia every year, which was
lovely.
So you'd fly to Naples, and then you'd get the aliscafo over to Ischia, and that was amazing. We the whole family out there, and you just eat well and drink well, and we go and do the passeggiato, and we'd have to do our holiday work with my grandfather, who was good at that sort of thing. But you take those things for granted when you're young. All of the family out there staying in a wonderful Excelsior hotel, and you just took that for granted and thought that was normal.
I haven't ever been to Ischia. There's an amazing hotel that's just opened called the Mezzotorre.
I saw that, and then I saw the prices. I said to Michael, we're going to go to Ischia, we're going to revisit it. We're not doing the Excelsior because it's, it's sort of one of those wonderful faded grounds. And I suddenly saw the prices, and there's a great friend of mine who's a brilliant travel person called Emily Fitzroy.
Who I love.
Bellini Travel.
Yes,
she is the queen.
Yes, she really is.
And
Queen of Italy.
Queen of Italy, and she did Succession. She does all those sort of locations. She said, no, I can't, because it's the same people who own the Pelicano. And the prices, I was like, whoa. I said, you get a discount? She said, no discounts here. But anyway, it was in peak season. That was the reason. Okay. So we were looking at it, but it did look incredible. And I love Capri as well. But Capri's a bit, jazzier. I like the Ischia and that sort of side.
So that's a couple of lovely poignant tales. I asked you to bring a photograph that sums up travel. Just explain that photograph to us.
Well, I was looking through and I was thinking, should I do it on the children? I thought it'd be a bit egocentric to do it on myself. And I thought, screw it.
I know, Tanya.
There were, and I could have done some lovely picture. And I was thinking again of doing ones when we were in Kipling, but then again, we had cameras in those days and I can't find any of the photographs because, there weren't digital cameras and you sort of had a Olympus or something. But the one I've got years and years and years ago, it must have been about 2003 or 4, and I was writing a book called The Year of Eating Dangerously, which was a travel food book about traveling around the world and finding strange foods, but not to laugh at them, God forbid, but to, I suppose, culinary relativism, to say that eating deep fried bee pupae in Laos is exactly the same as us eating M&Ms here in the UK. It's how you're brought up. It's the context of food. And even things like dog in Korea, which is slightly different because it's more of an aphrodisiac and it's dying out, thankfully. And, I love dogs and the rest of it. But, I tried positano and it, when dogs come in, they're wet and they come back and they smell of wet in the winter. And it sort of smelled like that, but it's supposed to be, good for the libido. I mean, it wasn't, and not that I tried, but it wasn't. Anyway, I won't do that again. But I was in Hong Kong and David Tang and Lucy Tang were there, and I was staying with them. And I wanted to go to Kowloon, and Kowloon's been massively redeveloped, as Hong Kong is a very different city to when we were younger. And it's basically me eating snake soup in Kowloon. And I don't know why I'm wearing a jumper because it was Hong Kong and it was
hot.
And I was with Tang's chauffeur called Alex, who looked like a big version of Oddjob, who constantly trying to sell me a $2 hooker. And absolutely like, boss, I get you really cheap. No, thanks. It's like, I'm fine. Tang said, don't ever send you a hooker. Don't ever send you a hooker, for God's sake. So trust me, I do not want. And it was, but he was there, and it just summed up for me. I love traveling by myself. I'm quite selfish. I love being able to go where I want to go. In the old days where they had magazines, to get a pile of magazines and sit in a restaurant and eat. And it was old Hong Kong because I haven't been back to Hong Kong since lockdown. And a lot of people said it's very different, for obvious reasons. It's no longer part, for good or for bad, no longer part of Britain. But, it's not, Hong Kong I always loved. It was a place you could always have an adventure. Very good food, very good hotels.
And if you were with David Tang, a very good time.
A very good time. And you'd always end up in a sort of ghastly club called Dragon Isles. Yes. Not with Tang, but but yes, it just sums up. It was just the joy of the first day of arriving somewhere. And of course, Tang you'd always be met at the sort of airside and, none of that sort of mucking around. Straight on. I think it was just before they built that new highway, the toll road. So and it wasn't quite the old one where you landed among the skyscrapers, and it just summed up food, travel, excitement, coming to a city you loved, but also going to do something new, to go, in Kowloon, there used to be a place called Snake Alley, and Chinese traditional medicine that again, it was seen as potent. So you'd have the snake, all these cobras around. I hate snakes, and all these cobras around you, sort of furious, knowing you're about to eat them. And then, of course, they grab the snake in front of you and slit it, pull out the gland. I mean, the bile gland that they put into the rice wine. Then the head would come off. So straight away, then they chop it. The soup was actually quite nice. cobra soup, but that shot of the snake blood or the snake bile with it. But it just for
Sums
me
up travel.
everything about travel, because now I do less of that sort of travel where you just, you have responsibilities and children and stuff to do, but in others you just think, I'll just go and find, follow and just see what to do this day. And good, is in the words of Nora Ephron, everything is copy. The more extreme the situation, the better copy you're going to get from it. That was when we were working for Esquire and GQ. You sort of wanted something to happen to you because that's another 500 words of really good copy. Which, looking back at it now, seems idiotic, but it seemed good at the time. But yes, that was it. It was the first taste of landing somewhere exotic and lovely, and the excitement of that. And that sums up travel for me.
It's a wonderful, wonderful photograph. Thank you so much for bringing it in. What's next? Where are you going next?
Next, I've got to go to New York next week.
Are you staying at the Carlisle?
Not staying at the Carlisle this time, actually, because I'm going with my friend Ewan. We're going to look at a restaurant that we've been working on for a while, Manuela, downtown New York, which would be great. I would say that. But I was there last week in New York, and the Carlisle, I just love. Discreet, and at Bellman's bar and the cocktail, you get, you have your martini, you get the little sort of jug of the extra stuff, and it's just, for me, New York epitomized. This time we're staying at a new hotel, Midtown. I was a bit sort of, what?
Where's that?
And I looked at it, and he sent me the link, and it's a very new 5-star hotel, Midtown, and it's apparently very good. I hate Midtown, but it's convenient to be up and down. But then there's a few places I really want to go to. Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii, because when you get to LA, you're so far, you think, I don't want another 6-hour flight. But I've never been to Vietnam. Weirdly, I love Vietnamese food, but so yes, it's always thinking. And then I'm going to Kenya for New Year, to Lamu, I think.
Oh yeah,
I've never been there, which is very exciting.
Yeah, very good.
And then to Sri Lanka for that wonderful literary festival in Galle, which has an Amman there, which is fantastic.
Wonderful.
And then so I'm always just thinking, booking in stuff, and if it's work, even better. You just go. And
Well, when you come back, I shall send you to booking her again.
Oh, is it your booking? I always call it Bushinger, but that's
I'm not
English
sure
for you.
how it's meant to be.
You're being polite. It's booking her.
Well, I think it is booking her. Wilhelm me.
Yeah.
It did take me a long time to learn it. Tom, it has been a joy and a delight to go around the world with you. Thank you so much for sharing your travel secrets.
A joy to be here.
Thank you.